Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of the hospital emergency room cast harsh shadows across Matthew Turner's face as he watched the nurse carefully clean the gravel embedded in his daughter's palms. Emma's small hands trembled, not from pain she couldn't feel much below her waist, but from exhaustion and fear. At 5 years old, she'd already learned more about suffering than most adults would in a lifetime. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "I tried to be brave." Matthew's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. He knelt beside the examination table, gently brushing her dark hair from her tear-stained face. "You were brave, sweetheart. You were so brave." The doctor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, documented the injuries with a professional detachment that Matthew envied. Road rash on both palms, bruised knees, a deep cut on her left shin that would need stitches, minor head trauma from a fall, all sustained, according to Emma's halting account, while she dragged herself 3 blocks from her grandparents' house to their own home. Without her wheelchair, Matthew had been an architect for 12 years, designing buildings that would stand for generations, but nothing in his training had prepared him for the rage that consumed him now. It was different from anger, colder, more focused, a glacier moving inexorably forward. "Mr. Turner?" Dr. Chen's voice pulled him back. "I need to ask Emma some questions. It's standard procedure for injuries like this." He nodded, his hand never leaving Emma's shoulder. "Emma, honey, can you tell me what happened today?" Emma's lower lip quivered. She glanced at Matthew, seeking permission, and he squeezed her shoulder gently. "It's okay, Emma, tell the doctor. Grandma Margaret and Grandpa Herbert were watching me while Daddy worked. Mommy's away." Emma's voice was small, frightened. "They said they needed to go to the store. They told me to stay in the living room and watch TV." Matthew's blood ran cold. He'd left Emma with his in-laws dozens of times over the past year, especially since Candace had taken that contract job in Seattle. The arrangement had seemed perfect. Her parents lived just a few blocks away. They'd eagerly volunteered, and Emma seemed comfortable with them. When they came back, Emma continued, her words coming faster now, as if she needed to get them out before she lost her courage. "I asked where my chair was. Grandpa Herbert said they sold it." Dr. Chen's pen froze. "They sold your wheelchair?" Emma nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Grandma Margaret said it was cluttering their house, and they got $50 for it. I asked how I would get home and—" she hiccuped, sobbing. "And Grandpa Herbert said to walk or crawl. They didn't care. He said I was faking anyway, that there was nothing really wrong with me." Matthew's vision blurred red. Dr. Chen set down her clipboard, her professional mask slipping to reveal fury. "They told a 5-year-old child in a wheelchair to walk home? And you?" She looked at Matthew. "How far is their house from yours?" 3 blocks. Maybe half a mile." His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "She crawled half a mile? A neighbor found her," Matthew said, each word carefully controlled. "Evelyn Kelly. She lives 2 houses down from us. She called me at work." He remembered that call, the panic in Mrs. Kelly's voice. Emma's crying in the background, the longest 15-minute drive of his life. Dr. Chen stood abruptly. "I'm calling Child Protective Services." "No." The word came out sharper than Matthew intended. "Please, Dr. Chen, give me time to handle this." The doctor studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Turner, this is serious. This is neglect at minimum, possibly abuse." "I know." Matthew's voice was steady now, that cold focus settling over him like armor. "But Emma's been through enough tonight. I don't want her traumatized by more strangers, more questions. Please, give me 48 hours. Doctor." Chen's expression softened as she looked at Emma, who'd fallen into an exhausted sleep against her father's chest. 48 hours. But I'm documenting everything. If you don't report this, I will. "I'll report it," Matthew promised, and he meant it. After the stitches, after the prescriptions for pain medication Emma wouldn't need but he filled anyway, after he'd carried his sleeping daughter to his car and driven home in silence, Matthew sat in his study. The house was quiet, too quiet. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Candace's number. His wife separated for 6 months now, though they hadn't filed for divorce needed to know. But it was past midnight in Seattle, and Candace had made it clear during their last conversation that she needed space, needed to focus on her career. Their marriage had crumbled slowly, like a building with a faulty foundation. She blamed him for working too much, for not being present enough. He'd blamed her for her parents' constant interference, for choosing them over him in every argument. Emma's diagnosis 3 years ago, spinal muscular atrophy, type 2, had been the earthquake that exposed every crack. Candace had wanted to try every experimental treatment, regardless of cost or Emma's comfort. Matthew had wanted to focus on making Emma's life as normal and happy as possible. Her parents, Herbert and Margaret Phelps, had sided with Candace, naturally, and had made Matthew's life a living hell for giving up on their granddaughter. The irony wasn't lost on him that these same people who'd accused him of not doing enough had just sold Emma's wheelchair for $50. Matthew opened his laptop instead, his architect's mind already building the framework of what needed to happen. He wasn't a man prone to rash action. Every building he designed started with careful research, precise measurements, a foundation that could weather any storm. This would be no different. He started with documentation. He downloaded the photos Dr. Chen had taken, backed up Emma's medical records, requested copies of the ER visit. He recorded a video of Emma's account while it was fresh in his memory, speaking clearly and calmly, noting the date and time. Then he began to research. Herbert Rowland, he'd never taken the Phelps name, a point of pride for a man who'd inherited his father's manufacturing business, and Margaret Phelps had been fixtures in the community for 40 years. Herbert ran Rowland Industrial Solutions, a mid-sized company that supplied custom parts to automotive manufacturers. Margaret had been a nurse before retiring 5 years ago. Respected, established, connected. Matthew had always been an outsider to them. The boy from nowhere who'd gotten their daughter pregnant in college and trapped her into marriage. Never mind that he'd graduated top of his class, that he'd built a successful career, that he'd loved Candace desperately for years. He dug deeper, pulling property records, business filings, tax documents, all public information, nothing illegal. An architect learned to navigate bureaucracy, to find the load-bearing walls in any structure, and what he found made his pulse quicken. Herbert and Margaret's house, the Victorian mansion on Maple Street that had been in the Rowland family for 3 generations, was mortgaged to the hilt. Not unusual in itself, but the timing was interesting. 6 months ago, right when Candace left for Seattle, they'd taken out a substantial home equity loan. Their business, Rowland Industrial Solutions, had recently lost 2 major contracts. Public record, buried in local business journals, Matthew subscribed to for professional reasons. They were in financial trouble. The wheelchair sale for $50 suddenly made 6 cents. Not that they needed the money, $50 was nothing, but that they were the kind of people who'd squeeze every penny from anything they deemed worthless, including their granddaughter's medical equipment. Matthew's phone buzzed. A text from Candace, Mom called. Said you took Emma to ER for attention. Is this another one of your stunts? His hands shook as he read it. Another text followed. Don't drag my parents into whatever game you're playing. He wanted to call her, to scream, to make her understand. Instead, he took a screenshot of the texts, added them to his growing file, and replied simply, Your parents sold Emma's wheelchair while babysitting. She crawled home. ER doc treated road rash and stitches. All documented. He sent a photo of Emma's bandaged hands. The phone rang immediately. He declined the call, then powered off the phone entirely. In the morning, Emma woke up crying, disoriented by the pain medication wearing off and the absence of her wheelchair. Matthew carried her downstairs, settled her on the couch with her favorite breakfast chocolate chip pancakes shaped like stars, and called his office to take emergency leave. Take all the time you need, his boss, Tom Fuller, said immediately. Tom had a daughter Emma's age, had watched Matthew struggle through the separation. Family first, always. Next, Matthew called the wheelchair manufacturer. The custom chair had cost $8,000, most of it covered by insurance, but with a significant out-of-pocket expense he'd barely managed. It would take 6 weeks to get a replacement, even with insurance approval. Can we expedite it? Matthew asked. For a child? Let me see what I can do. We might have a loaner. I'll pay whatever it takes. She needs it now. By noon, a rental wheelchair was delivered. It wasn't perfect, but Emma's face lit up when she saw it, and that was enough. At 1 o'clock, Matthew's doorbell rang. Herbert Rowland stood on his porch, all 6 feet and 200 pounds of him, his face red with anger. Who the hell do you think you are? Telling lies about us to Candace. Matthew didn't open the screen door. Mr. Rowland, I think you should leave. That girl is fine. She's been using that chair as a crutch, and you've been enabling her. Margaret and I decided. You decided to sell my daughter's medically necessary equipment without my permission and then told her to crawl home. She could walk if she wanted to. All she needs is... She has spinal muscular atrophy. It's degenerative. She can't walk. Herbert's face purpled. Doctors don't know everything. Margaret was a nurse for 30 years, and she says a lot of things. None of them excuse what you did. You've turned Candace against us. You've poisoned her mind. And now you're using that kid as a weapon. Matthew's control wavered. Just for a second. Get off my property. Or what? You'll call the cops? Go ahead. We're pillars of this community, Turner. You're nobody. A divorced deadbeat who can't even keep his wife happy. We're not divorced yet. Give it time. Herbert's smile was ugly. Candace is coming home. We've convinced her this Seattle thing is a mistake. And when she does, we're filing for custody. That little girl needs a real family, not some bitter architect who works 60-hour weeks. The door slammed shut in Herbert's face, but not before Matthew saw the truth in the older man's eyes. This wasn't about Emma. It had never been about Emma. This was about control, about winning, about making sure Matthew Turner knew his place. Margaret Phelps called an hour later, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Matthew, darling, Herbert told me there was a misunderstanding. I'm sure Emma exaggerated. She didn't exaggerate. I have medical documentation. Well, children do have such active imaginations. And you know, that wheelchair was taking up so much space in our guest room. We did tell Candace we'd be selling some things. You told Candace you'd be selling Emma's medical equipment. A pause. We might have mentioned we were decluttering. Really, Matthew, you're being very dramatic about this. Emma is fine. She needed stitches. Children get scrapes all the time. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Herbert and I simply think it's time Emma learned to be more independent. The doctors said she might walk again with physical therapy. The doctors said no such thing. Well, I'm a nurse. Matthew, I think I know better than you what's medically possible. You were a nurse. Past tense. And even if you weren't, you had no right. We have every right. We're her grandparents. We love her more than you ever could, you selfish, ungrateful. Matthew hung up. He sat in silence for a long moment, staring at his laptop screen, at the files he'd been compiling. Then, he opened a new document and began to type. He wrote down everything. The phone calls, Herbert's visit, the threats about custody, Margaret's dismissal of Emma's injuries. He noted times, dates, exact quotes where he could remember them. Then he started making calls. First, to his lawyer, Derek York, a sharp-minded man who'd handled the separation papers. Derek, I need you to file an emergency motion. Supervised visitation only for Candace's parents, and I want it documented why. What happened? Matthew explained. Derek's silence grew heavier with each detail. Jesus, Matt. Okay, I'll file first thing tomorrow. But you know this is going to get ugly, right? If they're threatening custody, let it get ugly. I'm done playing nice. Second call, to Dr. Chen. I want to file a formal report. Child Protective Services, police, whoever needs to know. Thank God, Dr. Chen said. I have everything ready. Third call, to Evelyn Kelly, the neighbor who'd found Emma. Mrs. Kelly, I need you to write down everything you saw when you found Emma. Everything she said. The condition she was in, all of it. Evelyn's voice shook with anger. I already started, Matthew. That poor baby. I've known the Rowlands for 20 years, and I've never seen such cruelty. By evening, the foundation was laid. But Matthew kept digging, because there was something nagging at him, a structural weakness he could feel but not yet see. He pulled up Rowland Industrial Solutions' recent filings again, cross-referenced them with county records, business licenses, environmental permits, and there it was. A permit violation from 3 months ago, quickly settled, barely mentioned in the local news. But the settlement amount was substantial, and it had required Herbert to personally guarantee certain environmental remediation standards. Standards that, according to a follow-up inspection report Matthew found buried in county archives, had not been met. Matthew sat back, his mind racing. This was it. Not embezzlement, not some generic financial crime. This was Herbert cutting corners to save money, risking environmental contamination, violating federal EPA regulations. This was Herbert Rowland's entire legacy, built on his father's name and his own arrogance, balanced on a foundation of fraud. And Matthew Turner, architect and father, knew exactly how to make it collapse. The next morning, Matthew drove Emma to a child psychologist, Dr. Karen Curtis, whom Derek York had recommended. Emma needed trauma counseling, and Matthew needed professional documentation of the psychological impact of what Herbert and Margaret had done. "Will you stay with me?" Emma asked as they entered the office, her small hand gripping his tightly. "Every second," Matthew promised. While Emma drew pictures with Dr. Curtis, a gentle woman with gray hair and kind eyes, Matthew sat in the waiting room and made more calls. He reached out to Raoul Glenn, an environmental engineer he'd worked with on a commercial project 2 years ago. "Raoul, I need a favor. How would someone go about reporting potential EPA violations?" Raoul whistled low. "That's serious business, Matt. You're talking federal fines, potential criminal charges. What's going on?" Matthew explained, carefully, focusing only on the public records. "Send me what you have," Raoul said. "If there's really contamination and he's ignored remediation requirements, that's not just a fine. That's shutdown territory. How long would an investigation take?" For EPA, once it's on their radar, they move fast. Inspections within days, usually. They don't mess around with environmental violations. Perfect. When Dr. Curtis emerged with Emma an hour later, her expression was grave. She asked to speak with Matthew privately. "Mr. Turner, Emma has experienced significant trauma. The abandonment, and that's what this was, medical neglect and abandonment, has severely impacted her sense of safety. She's having nightmares, anxiety attacks. She told me she's afraid you'll leave her too." Matthew's heart shattered. "I would never." "I know, and we'll work on that. But Matthew, you need to understand something. What Herbert and Margaret did wasn't just cruel. It was psychologically damaging in ways that will take months, maybe years to heal. I'm filing charges. Custody restrictions. Everything." Dr. Curtis nodded. "Good. And I'll provide whatever testimony or documentation you need. But there's something else." She hesitated. Emma mentioned that her grandmother has said things before. About Emma faking her condition. About her being lazy. This wasn't an isolated incident, Matthew. This was a pattern. Ice flooded Matthew's veins. What else did she say? She said Grandma Margaret used to make her try to stand, even when it hurt. That Grandpa Herbert would tell her she was disappointing them. That if she really loved them, she'd try harder. The folder in Matthew's hands crumpled. How long? She thinks since Candace left. 6 months. 6 months of his daughter being emotionally abused while he worked late, trusting that her grandparents loved her. 6 months of Herbert and Margaret's twisted ideology poisoning Emma's mind. He'd been so focused on giving Emma stability during the separation, on maintaining routine, that he'd missed the signs. Never again. That afternoon, while Emma napped, Matthew sent his compiled evidence to Raoul Glenn. Environmental inspection reports, permit violations, the settlement agreement, and the follow-up inspection showing non-compliance. All public record, all legally obtained. Raoul called back within an hour. "Matt, this is bad. Like, really bad. If the EPA sees this, send it to them. You understand what this means? Roland Industrial could be shut down. Fines in the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. Criminal charges for Herbert personally. He told my 5-year-old daughter to crawl home because he sold her wheelchair. Then he came to my house and threatened to take her from me. I understand exactly what this means." A long pause. "Consider it done." Matthew's phone rang immediately after. "Candace." He answered this time. "Matthew, what the hell is going on?" Her voice was frantic. "Mom is hysterical. Dad is threatening lawyers. And now you filed some kind of restraining order? Supervised visitation only. And yes, over a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Candace. Your parents sold Emma's wheelchair, told her to walk or crawl home, and she dragged herself 3 blocks. She needed stitches." Silence. "I sent you photos," Matthew continued, his voice flat. "Did you look at them?" Yes. But Mom said." "Mom said what? That Emma exaggerated? That she's faking?" "She said Emma was being dramatic. that you've always coddled her. Emma has spinal muscular atrophy. She physically cannot walk. Your mother, the supposed medical professional, knows this. And she sold Emma's chair anyway. Maybe they just needed the money. They sold an $8,000 wheelchair for $50 on Craigslist, Candace. This wasn't about money. This was about control. You're being paranoid. They threatened to file for custody. Herbert told me to my face. That stopped her. What? Yesterday. He showed up at my house, called me a deadbeat, said they were going to take Emma because I don't deserve her. He wouldn't. He did. I have neighbors who heard him. I have documentation. And I have 6 months of Emma telling a child psychologist about how your mother emotionally abused her, telling her she's faking, making her try to stand even when it hurt. Candace's breath hitched. That's not. Mom wouldn't. She did. And you weren't here to see it. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is that I trusted your parents with our daughter, and they betrayed that trust in the worst way possible. What's not fair is that Emma is traumatized and scared and hurt. What's not fair is that you're in Seattle defending the people who hurt our child. They're my parents. And Emma is your daughter. The line went silent except for Candace's ragged breathing. I'm coming home, she finally said. Good. Emma needs you. But Candace? Matthew's voice hardened. If you choose their side on this, if you try to minimize what they did, we're done. Not separated, divorced. Matthew, I mean it. Emma comes first. Not your parents' pride, not their reputation, not our marriage. Emma, he hung up before she could respond. The pieces were moving now. A controlled demolition of everything Herbert and Margaret Rowland had built. But Matthew wasn't satisfied. Not yet. He opened a new browser window and began researching Margaret's nursing career. She'd retired 5 years ago from Memorial Hospital, where she'd worked in pediatrics for 3 decades. Retired, not quit. The distinction mattered. He called the hospital's HR department, claiming to be verifying employment for a reference check. The woman on the other end was helpful, perhaps too helpful. Margaret Phelps? Oh, yes, she retired in 2020. Lovely woman. Though there was that incident at the end. Matthew's pulse quickened. Incident? I probably shouldn't say, but it's in her file, so it's not exactly secret. There was a complaint from a parent about her treatment of a disabled child, forcing physical therapy beyond what was prescribed. The parent claimed it was abusive. What happened? The hospital settled quietly. Mrs. Phelps agreed to retire rather than face an investigation. Matthew closed his eyes. Thank you. There it was. The pattern. The history. Margaret Phelps had been forced out of pediatric nursing for abusing a disabled child, and no one had thought to mention this when she volunteered to watch Emma. Or maybe someone had, and Candace had ignored it. He added this to his file, along with a request to Derek York to subpoena Margaret's employment records and the settlement details. By the time Emma woke from her nap, Matthew had built a case so comprehensive, so damning, that even the Rowlands' best lawyers would struggle to defend against it. But he wasn't done. Because this wasn't just about winning in court. This was about ensuring that Herbert and Margaret Rowland never had the power to hurt another child again. That night, after tucking Emma into bed and reading her 3 stories instead of the usual one, Matthew sat at his computer and drafted one final document. A detailed timeline of events, supported by medical records, photos, witness statements, and psychological evaluations. A companion piece to the EPA complaint, the CPS report, and the custody motion. This one would go to the media. Not immediately. That would be his fail-safe. His nuclear option if Herbert and Margaret tried to fight dirty. But it would be ready. Matthew Turner had spent 12 years building structures designed to last. Now he would spend every resource he had ensuring that Herbert and Margaret Rowland's house of cards collapsed completely. And when it did, he'd make sure they understood exactly why. For Emma, the EPA showed up at Rowland Industrial Solutions on a Tuesday morning, 3 black SUVs and a team of investigators with federal badges. Matthew watched from his car parked across the street. Emma's safe with Mrs. Kelly for the afternoon. He told Raoul not to mention his name. The complaint had been filed anonymously, as was allowed for environmental violations. Just a concerned citizen reporting potential contamination. The investigators spent 6 hours on site. They emerged with sealed containers of soil samples, water samples, and boxes of documents. Herbert Rowland stood in the parking lot. his face the color of old concrete, screaming into his phone. Matthew drove home satisfied. The first domino had fallen. The second fell that evening. When two police officers arrived at the Rowland mansion to serve Herbert and Margaret with formal complaints from Child Protective Services, Matthew knew because Mrs. Kelly called him, her voice breathless with vindication. "Matthew, there are police cars at the Rowlands' house." "Two of them, I know," Matthew said quietly. The third domino was the court order, delivered Wednesday morning, restricting all contact between Herbert, Margaret, and Emma to supervised visits only, pending a full hearing. Candace called within minutes. "How could you do this?" She was crying. "They're my parents. They abused our daughter. They made a mistake. They've been making mistakes for 6 months, Candace. Every time they told Emma she was faking. Every time they made her try to stand when it hurt. Every time they convinced her that her disability was a choice. You don't understand what this is doing to them. Dad's business is being shut down by the EPA. They're facing criminal charges." "Good. Matthew. He violated environmental regulations. Candace. He put profit over safety, and now he's facing consequences. That has nothing to do with me. Don't lie to me. This is all happening at once. The EPA, CPS, the court order. You did this. I filed a complaint with CPS, yes. I filed for supervised visitation, yes. The EPA investigation has nothing to do with me." It was technically true. He hadn't filed the EPA complaint. Raoul had. "I don't believe you. Believe what you want. But Candace, you need to make a choice. Are you coming home for Emma or for them? I can't just abandon my parents. They abandoned our daughter on a sidewalk." Candace sobbed. "This isn't fair. You're destroying them. They destroyed themselves. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." She hung up. Matthew deleted her number from his recent calls and went to check on Emma, who was sitting in her new wheelchair watching cartoons, her bandaged hands holding a juice box. "Daddy, is Mommy coming home?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Will Grandma and Grandpa come back?" "Not for a long time. Maybe never." Emma looked up at him, her dark eyes so much older than 5 years should allow. "Good." Matthew's heart broke and healed simultaneously. Thursday brought the preliminary EPA findings. Soil contamination levels exceeding federal limits by 3 times. Groundwater contamination affecting the surrounding area. Evidence of deliberate disposal of hazardous waste in violation of the settlement agreement. Rowland Industrial Solutions was immediately shut down, pending full remediation. Estimated cost, $2.3 million. Herbert's personal assets would be frozen to cover potential fines and cleanup costs. Friday afternoon, Matthew received a call from Derek York. "Matt, the Rowlands are fighting back. They've hired Gilberto Riggs, one of the best defense attorneys in the state. He's claiming harassment, that you orchestrated all of this, that the EPA complaint is retaliation. Can they prove it? No. But Riggs is good. He's going to make this ugly in court. Let him. There's more. Margaret filed a countercomplaint with CPS, claiming you've been coaching Emma, that you're using her as a weapon in the divorce." Matthew laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Of course she did. We have the medical records. We have Dr. Curtis's evaluation. We have Mrs. Kelly's testimony. We're solid, Matt. But this is going to be brutal." "I know." Saturday morning. The hearing for supervised visitation was held in family court. Matthew sat beside Derek York, a folder of evidence on the table before them. Across the aisle, Herbert and Margaret sat with Gilberto Riggs, their faces masks of barely controlled fury. The judge, a stern woman named Honor Amanda Reeves, reviewed the case file for 10 minutes before looking up. "Mr. Riggs, your clients stand accused of medical neglect and child endangerment. The evidence presented by Mr. Turner is substantial. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor. This is a clear case of parental alienation. Mr. Turner has poisoned his daughter against her grandparents following a difficult separation from his wife. The alleged incident with the wheelchair was a misunderstanding, exacerbated by Mr. Turner's coaching of the child." Judge Reeves looked at the photos of Emma's injuries. "Explain these." "Children fall, Your Honor. Emma is a disabled child who is attempting to walk. She has spinal muscular atrophy. She cannot walk. The grandparents, in their medical judgment, Margaret Phelps was asked to retire from her nursing position following a complaint of abuse of a disabled child. Her medical judgment is questionable at best. Riggs's jaw tightened. That settlement was confidential. It was disclosed in discovery, Mr. Riggs. I've reviewed it. Judge Reeves turned to Matthew. Mr. Turner, walk me through what happened. Matthew did, calmly and precisely. He presented Dr. Chin's medical report, Dr. Curtis's psychological evaluation, Mrs. Kelly's written statement, and photos. He noted the timeline, the threats Herbert had made, Margaret's dismissive phone call. When he finished, Judge Reeves looked at the Rowlands. You sold a disabled child's wheelchair for $50 and told her to walk home. Herbert stood. Your Honor, we did not. Sit down, Mr. Rowland. The judge's voice could have frozen fire. This isn't a criminal trial, and you're not the defendant here. But based on the evidence presented, I'm granting the motion for supervised visitation only. All contact between Emma Turner and her grandparents will be supervised by a court-appointed guardian at a neutral location for a period of no less than 6 months. Your Honor, Riggs stood. This is excessive. What's excessive, Mr. Riggs? Is a 5-year-old child dragging herself 3 blocks with open wounds because her grandparents abandoned her. We're done here. The gavel fell. Herbert and Margaret's faces went from red to white. As Matthew gathered his papers, Herbert caught his eye across the courtroom. The hatred there was pure and absolute. Matthew smiled. Outside, Derek clapped him on the shoulder. Phase 1 complete. The CPS investigation will take longer, but we've established the pattern. You did good, Matt. It's not enough. What do you mean? Matthew looked at the courthouse, then at the folders still in his hand. They threatened to take Emma from me. They hurt her, traumatized her, and their only regret is getting caught. I want them to lose everything, Derek. Everything. The EPA investigation might do that. If the fines are as high as projected, not might, will, and not just the business. I want their house, their savings, their reputation. All of it. Derek studied him for a long moment. You're not just protecting Emma anymore. This is revenge. This is justice. There's a difference, Matt. Not to me. Not after what they did. That night, Matthew uploaded his compiled evidence, every document, every photo, every statement to a secure cloud server. Then he drafted an email to Sherry Harrington, an investigative journalist he'd met at a charity event 2 years ago. The email sat in his drafts folder. Not yet, but soon. Sunday, Candace came home. She arrived at noon, her rental car pulling into the driveway with a hesitant slowness that told Matthew everything he needed to know. She'd chosen her parents. Emma was at physical therapy, giving them space to talk. Candace looked exhausted, her usually perfect hair pulled into a messy ponytail, her eyes red from crying. Matthew, Candace. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd shared thousands of meals, made plans, argued about Emma's treatment, and slowly fallen out of love. I saw the court order, she said. Supervised visitation only. Yes. They're devastated. Emma needed stitches. Candace flinched. I know. I'm not saying what they did was right. But Matthew, destroying their business? The EPA investigation? That's too far. I didn't destroy their business. They did? When they violated environmental regulations. You reported them. Someone did. Anonymously. Don't insult my intelligence. Matthew leaned back. Fine. You want honesty? Yes, I made sure the right people knew about the violations. Your father was dumping hazardous waste to save money, contaminating groundwater that supplies 3 neighborhoods. He deserved to be reported. He's going to lose everything. He should. He risked people's health for profit. And more importantly, Candace, he hurt our daughter and felt no remorse. None. He came to my house and threatened to take her from me. He was angry. He was cruel. And your mother was worse, because she used her nursing background to justify it. They made Emma believe her disability was her fault. Candace's hands trembled. I didn't know about the things they said to her. Mom never told me. Would you have believed her if Emma told you? Silence. That's what I thought, Matthew said. What do you want from me? Candace's voice broke. You want me to cut off my parents completely? I want you to choose Emma. Just once. Put our daughter first. I do put her first. You're here defending the people who sold her wheelchair. Candace stood abruptly, pacing. They're my parents, Matthew. They raised me, loved me, sacrificed for me. I can't just throw them away because they made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was cruelty. You're being extreme. Emma was bleeding on the sidewalk. Candace. She crawled half a mile. Those are facts, not extremes. Candace turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. I can't do this. I can't choose between my daughter and my parents. Then you've already chosen. The words hung in the air between them. I want a divorce, Candace whispered. Matthew had known it was coming, but the words still hit like a physical blow. Okay. I want joint custody. 50-50. No. You can't keep her from me. I can, and I will, if you're going to expose her to your parents. Supervised visitation or nothing, Candace. Not negotiable. You bastard. I'm the bastard who was there when Emma needed me. Where were you? Candace grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I'm fighting for custody. Good luck. The court just ruled that your parents aren't safe to be around Emma. You think they'll give you 50-50 when you're defending them? She slammed the door on her way out. Matthew sat in the empty kitchen for a long time, listening to the silence. Then he opened his laptop and sent the email to Sherry Harrington. The article ran in the Tuesday edition of the city's largest newspaper, front page, above the fold. Prominent local family under investigation for child abuse and environmental crimes. Sherry had done her homework. Every detail Matthew had provided was corroborated, sourced, legally airtight. The story of Emma's wheelchair, Herbert's EPA violations, Margaret's forced retirement from nursing, the court order for supervised visitation. By noon, the story had been picked up by state news. By evening, it was trending on social media. The Rowland name, respected for 3 generations, was destroyed in less than 12 hours. Matthew picked up Emma from school, her first day back since the incident, and found her smiling, surrounded by friends who'd made her welcome back cards. Everyone was so nice today, Daddy, she said as he helped her into the car. Mrs. Fuller said I was very brave. Tom Fuller's wife taught at Emma's school. Of course word had spread. You were brave, Emma. Some kids asked about my chair. I told them Grandma and Grandpa sold it, but that was okay, because you got me a better one. Matthew's throat tightened. Did that feel okay, talking about it? Dr. Curtis said it's good to tell the truth. The truth can't hurt me. Out of the mouths of babes. That evening, Derek called. Matt, have you seen the news? I might have. Riggs is threatening to sue you for defamation. And Herbert is claiming you leaked confidential EPA information. Everything in that article is public record or from Emma's medical files, which I have every right to share. He can try to sue. He won't win. He's also filed a countersuit. Harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation. Let him. We have the truth. Derek sighed. You're playing with fire, Matt. I'm cauterizing a wound. The countersuit was filed Wednesday morning. Matthew received the papers at work, read them during his lunch break, and laughed. Herbert was accusing him of orchestrating a conspiracy to destroy the Rowland family, of using Emma as a pawn, of manipulating the EPA investigation and the media coverage. All unprovable. All defensible. That afternoon, Matthew received a call from an unknown number. Mr. Turner? This is Special Agent Edwin Story with the FBI. I need to speak with you about the Rowland Industrial Solutions case. Matthew's blood ran cold. FBI. Am I under investigation? No, sir. But we believe there may be additional violations related to federal contracting fraud. I understand you've compiled significant documentation regarding the company's operations. I've compiled what's publicly available. Yes. Would you be willing to provide that to our investigators? Matthew smiled. Absolutely. The FBI investigation moved faster than the EPA's. Within a week, agents had seized Rowland Industrial Solutions financial records. Within 2, they'd uncovered a scheme where Herbert had been overbilling federal automotive contracts for parts, pocketing the difference. The fraud went back 7 years. Millions of dollars. Herbert Rowland was arrested on a Friday morning, led out of his house in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. Margaret stood on the porch, screaming at the agents, her face contorted with rage. Matthew watched the footage that evening with Emma asleep upstairs. He felt nothing. No satisfaction. No regret. Just a cold certainty that this was how it had to be. Candace called an hour later. "Are you happy now?" She sobbed. "Dad's in jail. Mom's had a breakdown. The house is going to be seized to cover the fines. Everything they built is gone. Emma's trauma is gone too," Matthew said quietly. "She's sleeping through the night now. Did you know she was having nightmares? Afraid I'd sell her wheelchair too?" Candace's crying intensified. "This is your fault. All of it." "No, Candace. This is their fault. They chose to sell Emma's chair. They chose to violate EPA regulations. They chose to commit federal fraud. All I did was make sure the right people knew about it. You destroyed them. They destroyed themselves. I just expedited the process. I'll never forgive you. I don't need your forgiveness. I need you to be a mother to Emma. Can you do that?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Matthew said, and hung up. The divorce proceedings began the following Monday. Candace was fighting for joint custody, claiming Matthew had manipulated Emma and destroyed her family out of spite. Derek presented the evidence. Dr. Curtis's evaluations showing Emma's improvement away from her grandparents. The medical records documenting the abuse. Candace's text messages defending Herbert and Margaret even after seeing photos of Emma's injuries. The judge granted Matthew primary custody, with Candace receiving supervised visitation every other weekend. Candace left the courthouse without looking at him. That night, Matthew made Emma's favorite dinner mac and cheese with hot dog pieces cut into stars, and they ate together at the kitchen table. "Mommy's not coming back, is she?" Emma asked. Matthew wanted to lie, to protect her, but Dr. Curtis had been clear. Truth. Always. "Not for a while, sweetheart. Mommy's very sad right now. Because of Grandma and Grandpa." "Yes." Emma was quiet for a moment, pushing her macaroni around. "It's not your fault, Daddy. You protected me." 7 years old. 7, and already wise beyond her years. "I'll always protect you, Emma. Always." She smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Matthew had ever seen. Herbert Rowland's trial began 6 months later. Matthew attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Emma beside him during the parts that weren't too graphic. The prosecution presented evidence of years of fraud, environmental violations, and willful endangerment. The defense argued that Herbert was a businessman who'd made mistakes, not a criminal. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. 15 years in federal prison, $4.7 million in fines and restitution. Forfeiture of all assets, including the Rowland family mansion. Margaret Phelps avoided jail time, but was sentenced to 5 years probation and community service. Her nursing license was permanently revoked. The house sold at auction. A developer bought it, planning to tear it down and build condos. 3 generations of Rowland legacy erased. Matthew felt no triumph. Only a quiet satisfaction that Emma would never have to fear them again. Candace didn't attend the sentencing. She'd moved back to Seattle permanently, taking a job with a tech company and relinquishing all claims to custody. She sent child support checks monthly, never with a note. Emma stopped asking about her mother after a while. A year after the incident, Matthew stood in his backyard, watching Emma race her new wheelchair around the garden path. She'd grown stronger, more confident. Dr. Curtis said the trauma was healing, slowly but surely. Mrs. Kelly brought over cookies, as she did every Sunday. "You did right by that girl," she said, watching Emma laugh. "I did what I had to." Herbert's appeal was denied yesterday. Did you see? Matthew had. He'd stopped following the case months ago, but Derek still sent updates. Good. And Margaret's working at a soup kitchen now, part of her community service. Someone said she looks 20 years older. Matthew said nothing. "You know," Mrs. Kelly continued, "some folks think you went too far. That you could have just gotten the custody order and let it be. Those folks didn't see Emma bleeding on the sidewalk." "No, they didn't." Mrs. Kelly squeezed his shoulder. "I saw her, and I saw what you did to make sure she was safe. You're a good father, Matthew Turner." Emma called out, "Daddy, come push me." Matthew smiled. "Coming, sweetheart." As he crossed the lawn, the evening sun casting long shadows, Matthew thought about the man he'd been a year ago, an architect who built structures meant to last. He was still that man, but now he'd built something even more important, a safe, happy life for his daughter, constructed on the rubble of those who'd tried to hurt her. And that structure would stand forever. 2 years after the incident, Matthew received a letter. It came from Herbert Rowland, forwarded through the federal prison system to Derek York, who called before passing it along. "Matt, Herbert sent you something. You don't have to read it." "What does it say?" "A lot of angry rambling. Blaming you for everything. Claiming he was set up. The usual denial. Send it over." The letter arrived by courier that afternoon. Matthew read it once, methodically, his architect's eye noting every flaw in Herbert's logic, every desperate attempt to rewrite history. "You destroyed my family," Herbert had written. "You took everything from us because of one mistake. Emma would have been fine. You're a vindictive, cruel man who used his own daughter as a weapon. I hope you rot in hell." Matthew folded the letter carefully and placed it in a file box labeled Roland Case. Then he deleted it from his mind. That evening, he took Emma to her favorite restaurant to celebrate her 7th birthday. She wore a dress she'd picked out herself, purple with sparkles, and her wheelchair had streamers attached to the handles. "Make a wish," Matthew said as the waiter brought out a cake with 7 candles. Emma closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and blew them all out. "What did you wish for?" the waiter asked. Emma grinned. "Can't tell, or it won't come true." But she whispered it to Matthew later, as he tucked her into bed. "I wish that you'd always be my daddy." Matthew kissed her forehead. "That's one wish that's already true, sweetheart. No magic needed." As he turned off her light and closed the door, Matthew allowed himself a moment of reflection. Herbert was in prison. Margaret was broken. Candace was gone. The Rowland empire had crumbled to dust. And Emma was safe, happy, thriving. The architect in Matthew appreciated the symmetry. He demolished a corrupt structure and built something better in its place. The father in him simply felt peace. In the study, his phone buzzed with a message from Tom Fuller. "Drinks tomorrow? Heard you got promoted to senior partner." Matthew smiled. Life was moving forward. He replied, "Absolutely. First round's on me." Then he powered down his laptop, double-checked the locks on the doors, and went to bed. The battle was over. Emma had won. And Matthew Turner, the quiet architect who'd learned to fight for what mattered most, could finally rest. 5 years after the incident, Emma Turner turned 10 years old. She'd become a force of nature despite, or perhaps because of her wheelchair, serving on student council, winning art competitions, and making friends easily. Matthew had dated a few times, nothing serious, always careful to ensure Emma felt secure and prioritized. His career had flourished, the promotion to senior partner opening doors to bigger projects and international clients. But his best work, he knew, wasn't in the buildings he designed. It was in the girl who wheeled through his house singing off-key to her favorite songs. On Emma's 10th birthday, she asked for a party at the community center. 30 kids showed up, along with their parents, Mrs. Kelly, Dr. Curtis, and even Tom Fuller's family. As Matthew watched Emma laugh with her friends, he spotted a familiar face across the room. Candace. She'd aged in 5 years, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She stood uncertainly by the door, holding a wrapped present. Emma saw her too. For a moment, the laughter stopped. Then, Emma wheeled over. Matthew tensed, ready to intervene, but Emma's voice was calm. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, baby. Happy birthday." Candace knelt down, tears already forming. "I'm so sorry I've been gone." "I know. Can we talk? Later?" Emma looked back at Matthew. He nodded. "Just once." "Okay," Emma said. "But you can't stay long. I have cake to eat." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a door opening. Just a crack. Later, after the party, after the guests had left and Emma was sorting her presents, Candace approached Matthew. "Thank you for letting me come. Emma wanted you here. She's so grown up, so strong. She had to be." Candace flinched. "I know what I did, Matthew. Choosing them over her. Over you. I've had 5 years to think about it. And I was wrong. About everything. I let my parents poison me against you, against the truth. I let my need to believe they were good people blind me to what they really were." Matthew said nothing. "Herbert wrote to me from prison," Candace continued. "Angry, hateful letters blaming you for everything. I realized reading them that he learned nothing, felt no remorse. And I thought about Emma, about what he did to her, and I just broke. What do you want, Candace? To be part of her life again. Not custody, not even unsupervised visits. Just to be her mom, if she'll let me. Matthew studied her for a long moment. That's up to Emma. But if you hurt her again, I won't. I swear, Matthew. I won't. He didn't fully believe her. But he saw the desperation in her eyes, the genuine regret, and decided to give Emma the choice. Talk to Dr. Curtis. Work with her on rebuilding trust. We'll start with supervised visits and see how it goes. Candace nodded, tears streaming freely now. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is for Emma, not for you. She left quietly, and Matthew returned to the living room where Emma was examining a new art set. Is Mom coming back? She asked without looking up. Maybe, if you want her to. Emma was quiet for a minute. I think I do, but it's okay if she doesn't stay. Why's that? Because I have you. She looked up, smiling. And you're enough. Matthew's heart swelled. You're enough for me too, sweetheart. That night, after Emma was asleep, Matthew stood in his study looking at the file box labeled Roland Case. He hadn't opened it in 3 years. He carried it to the garage, placed it in the recycling bin, and walked back inside. Some structures, once demolished, didn't need to be remembered. Only the lessons learned from their collapse. Herbert Roland died in prison 7 years into his sentence. A heart attack, sudden and final. The news reached Matthew through a brief email from Derek York. He told Emma, who absorbed the information with a maturity that still surprised him. Are you sad? She asked. No, Matthew said honestly. Are you? Emma thought about it. I don't think so. I barely remember him. That's okay. Margaret Phelps lived another 10 years, alone in a small apartment, her community service completed, her social circle reduced to nothing. She tried to reach out to Emma once, through a letter sent to Candace.